Hello, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk with Tia and Jill. We're super excited about today.
We are very excited. As you can see, we have a special guest, Kathrina Reed from General Mills. And so we are going to dive in and spend a lot of time with Kathrina because she has like pure nuggets of wisdom to share with all of us. Oh, you do, and you know.
My best.
We're super excited about Kathrina. For people out there that know me, know that I started my career with Kathrina. So my foundation has been with General Mills, and specifically growing up under Kathrina. So if I say something wild, it may or may not have come from Kathrina.
So most likely did.
Well, and as people are joining us, certainly drop in the comments if you are live with us or if you are doing #play retag, because we love to make sure that we come back and whatever comments are there, our goal is to make sure we get to all of them. So use the chat, put questions in. You know, this is a conversation because this is where we get better together and learn as an industry. So
yeah, absolutely. And let us know where you're listening from, where in the world you're listening from, and why you're here today, because we're super excited to dive deep into the topic of onboarding this month. And for those who haven't listened to Real Talk Food Safety, we're Tia and Jill, and we're really your go-to team for food safety, quality, culture, and leadership. And, you know, our goal is to build sustainable food safety cultures, not just programs. And we really do believe that it starts with you. You are the food safety and quality leader. You have an area of influence that you could really start to push your organization's culture forward. So we love to talk each week on LinkedIn Live every Wednesday at noon Eastern time to talk about food safety culture, parts of food safety culture, and really just give you tidbits on, you know, how you can push your culture forward. So we're excited about our guest today, Kathrina Reed, and we're excited about jumping in to talk about onboarding.
We are. And before we totally jump in, I just want to share that Kathrina is actually the first guest of our 4-week series that we're running related to onboarding and early technical leadership in food. And so we have like rock star lineup the next few weeks where we have people who will be sharing insights from seasoned leaders all the way to like new graduates to help us understand how we can better set people up for success when they come into food safety and quality. Yeah. And so hopefully this gives you a chance to consider what you need to be successful in a new role, or as you're transitioning roles, and maybe how you can help others come along on that path as well.
Yeah. So we know onboarding is the foundation, right? When someone joins a new organization or goes into a new role, or even new people coming into your organization as leaders in FSQ, it's so important that people have that foundation, learn where your culture is currently and how to push it forward. So we're excited to have our guests on this month because we want to learn from what's happening in the industry. And you know, that's what we're all about, sharing this knowledge, sharing best practices, and helping you all implement it into your organization. So we're excited.
Yes. All right, well, let's jump in. So not everyone knows Kathrina, and we're so happy to have you here, Kathrina.
Thank you.
So to kick us off, would you even tell us a little bit about yourself and help our audience get to know you a little bit?
Absolutely. So, you know, I'm seeing a couple of people in the comments that I know and some that I don't. So excited to be here. And, you know, honestly, I was also saying I hugely support Jill and Tia and the work that we're doing with Real Talk. I think it's such a cool idea, like to just have a forum where all food safety people come together on various topics. Because I always say food safety is not a competitive advantage. We want everybody to win in food safety. So like, I want even our competitors to do great because, you know, nobody ever wants somebody to get sick from food. I mean, that's just when you go and eat, you want to enjoy your food. And the last thing you need to be thinking about is, am I going to get sick? And so I started with General Mills over 30 years ago, which is hard to believe. So I was just a child when I started. But I had a food science degree from Purdue University. I was always interested in food. My dad, if some of you know, he's a Hungarian PhD food scientist from, he got his degree at Michigan State, and he was in R&D. And so when I came to him and I was like, I'm going to work in quality, he was like, you sure you don't want to do R&D? And I was like, no, I really feel like there's purpose and meaning in food safety. And so I really want to join General Mills. So my career has been from college right into General Mills. Before that, I actually had internships in the UK. So I saw somebody was in the UK. I was in Kit Green, England for Heinz. So that's a kind of a fun fact. And so I've worked in pretty much every part of General Mills and the plants. And so most all of my experience is plant experience. And so it's really like implementing food safety systems and programs. I've been part of a couple of the General Mills acquisition of Pillsbury and in some of the Pillsbury plants. So a lot of thermal process experience, dairy experience, cereal bars, ready to eat cookie dough. That's what we do. So excited to have that in the marketplace. So all sorts of different things. I also, some may or may not know, I've had operational experience too. So I was an ops manager when I was in Hannibal, Missouri for about 3 years. And so that gave me a really good well-rounding. And part of why in my onboarding, a lot of times I make my quality people do a stint in operations so that they can build empathy. And so that was part of what I felt was really valuable to me. It helped me understand budgeting. It helped me understand the many dynamics of operational work, and really gave me a foundation for how to influence effectively when something needed to be a priority.
Love it. I love it. And you've also onboarded a lot of people during your time at General Mills.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, Christine, most of the people that I've onboarded are brand new out of college. So I've had, over every year I get at least a new quality associate is what we call in our onboarding process. And then I also get interns, but I also get people from other plants that'll come in to fill positions. And then I also get people from other companies that might come in based on if we have open positions. Murfreesboro is a pretty popular location. And so we usually have a lot of talent that wants to work in our facilities. We have 2 facilities there. So we usually have a lot of different talent. But where I love to be is either in mentoring people as they're progressing through their career or people as they onboard into the General Mills culture or the food safety culture. So I've also had people that were in operations and were, really showed this technical depth. And so like I tried to woo them over into the food safety arena as well. So there's different ways to get people, but I either have had them from other organizations, logistics, operations, and then brought them into quality. So there's different kinds, right? So like if you're brand new, the onboarding is going to look different than if you're onboarding from another plant, and that's different than onboarding from another facility. And then different, again, if you're coming from another function. And so all of those things tend to be something that you have to really think through before you actually develop the onboarding plan. So you can start with a basic foundational template, but you have to also consider the individual, and some of the stuff that I always talk to people about is, if you're getting a food scientist, you may not need to do a whole lot about the science, but you probably need to do quite a bit on the mechanical side of things, like how do pumps and gears and motors work? And, those are the things that sometimes break down, or, just your mechanical systems and operations are the part that if they don't come with that engineering background might be tough. And then I always say, and I don't endorse any specific thing, but I will share the things that I like to use. But if you're not a food scientist, I highly recommend getting some food science experiences or just some technical depth, just because that food science and when you're troubleshooting can be really important. So I've used a lot of different food chemistry books. The one that I like because I love to cook and bake is Cookwise. And it's just an easy book that explains the science of different, and it's all sorts of cooking things. And then there's all different kinds of books based on that book, but it helps you understand like why you're making something the way that you're making it. And if it's like, if you get a cookie and it's burnt, it'll explain like maybe you had too much sugar in it, or maybe you use butter instead of shortening, those kinds of things.
Yeah. I love having you on the show today because you went through your background and you're talking through all the different areas that you've worked in and how you bring that together for your onboarding plan. I think it's something that's super unique. And as people are thinking about what type of experiences they want to get throughout their career, it's so important to make sure that you have that, you called it empathy, that point of view, that perspective of other functions that you're working with. We always talk about food safety and quality. We touch almost every function in the organization. Absolutely. So knowing what they do, understanding their perspective will only make you a stronger leader in an organization. But then it also will help you with your onboarding plans and how you help onboard someone else that's coming in, because you have that different perspective.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And, it's really interesting as well, because one of the things that we talk a lot about is, often when people come into a new role, I don't want to say it's heads down, but there's a list of stuff that has been waiting for you when you arrive to start doing. But yet, if you can just pause for a moment and look to see who in the space you really need to connect with, and who will be those partners as you are trying to get those things done, because without having people on board first, it makes the rest of the whole process really more challenging.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Kathrina, you also talked about, depending on your background, you like to start with, okay, what gaps are they missing that they might be missing coming from school, or even an area they maybe haven't worked in before. How do you close that gap for them? What are some things that you tell them they should do in the first, 30 days or 60 days, 90 days in order to fill that gap? You kind of talked about reading some literature. What other things, hands-on things they can do?
So the two things that there's probably more than two, but the things that I like to really start out with is one, also realize like they want to get in and do stuff too. So like when you start a new job, you want to get in and do stuff. And so I always give them a list of the people that they're going to be like working with most, and tell them to just set up like 30-minute meetings. I often tell them like those 30-minute meetings, if probably the most comfortable thing is to, especially if you're in a plant environment, is to go to the floor. So if you're going to meet with your operations team leader, or you're going to meet with the manager, oftentimes it's easier if you go to the floor and you can have conversations about things on the floor. The other thing I really like them to do is to learn one system really well from front to back. And then how I have them do that is I have very little rules. I'm like, I want you to go learn like from the front of the system to the back of the system, how ingredients come in, how they transition to making product or transform, and then how they go out. And so that's really, and I want you to draw out that system, and then I want you to come back and explain it to me, and maybe we'll walk out. And really then I tell them like, what I want you to consider is like, what's the staffing on the line? Who does what? Where are your quality checkpoints? Where are your food safety checkpoints? How does the line get cleaned? So you give them kind of a list of things to think about. We do it in an assessment sort of way, where we give them like it's almost like a rubric if you think back to school, and they get like, here's what we want you to be thinking about. And then they go out. And when they come back, what I find is you can really determine what that person is like, because some people come back and they will tell you the life story of every single person on the line team. That might have been Tia. she might have come back and told me about like everybody's story, their family, and then, really diving into like, okay, well, where were the screens, or were there magnets, or what kind of checks do they do? And then that really helps you understand the individual. And then you can start telling them like, hey, you missed some of these things. And so like what I always talk about is like that coaching in those small moments is so important, is, let them go out and learn, and then come back and say like, hey, you know, the line had a metal detector and you didn't talk about that. So like, I want you to go find out. I always say too, like, don't tell them the answer, like make them go find. The onboarding and learning are so much more impactful if you don't give them all the answers. And so if they have to go out and then go back out and find that metal detector or the magnet, where was the magnet, or the sifter, or that kind of thing, it's going to stick with them much more. And so a lot of times, you know, we were talking earlier that it feels like so much work for the manager to do onboarding effectively. And if you have a good plan, that work isn't as much, because that individual can start contributing and learning with you just giving them like checkpoints, right? Like you can take a half an hour, see what they learned, and then tell them where the gaps were. And most people want to know, like, they don't want you to tell them they're just doing a great job all the time. They want to know, like, okay, I went out and did this drawing, and it's intense too, like to go out and draw your whole system, but to come back and say like, okay, you know, there were these parts of the system I want you to go find now. And so like, on a regulatory system or a thermal process or a dairy, like I tell them, like, go find where the regulatory seals are, or where are your thermal process checkpoints, or where are your bleeder valves on your cooker, like, you know, so that they have things to go find. That makes the learning more impactful from especially technically.
Yeah, you're
sounds
bringing up memories.
It sounds like you kind of give them a treasure hunt, and with that, helping kind of instill this this philosophy, like you are resourceful,
Yes.
so that, like you said, to help them really step into like owning that role and really setting kind of the tone for like, yeah, go out and find this stuff. Like, don't come to us for answers. I mean, we're here to guide and prevent, you know, give maybe some bumpers, but like, you can do this, and helping them really kind of instill that confidence and belief in them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it helps with problem solving later on, right? Where if something goes wrong in your system, you understand your system so deeply that you're able to even call out that someone else might have missed. Like, oh, I know that we have these screws in this area that could be causing the metal, or I know how this line operates in the sense of maybe something's offline, or, you know, off alignment, and we need to take a look at that. And that's why we're getting this foreign material, or we're not, you know, getting high quality products. So knowing that information helps you dig into your system. So yeah, you know, it definitely brings back memories, because that's exactly the way Kathrina onboards. And I love that approach, because for those things, but then also a lot of times we're giving this presentation to our counterparts. So you're talking with operations people, maintenance people, and you're walking through the system that's known the system for, you know, 5+ years. And so that helps even expand the knowledge to say, okay, what did I miss? What do I need to look at? You know, how is this going to relate to my future role in food safety and quality? So I love that.
Yeah. So, and it's also a new set of eyes for you. Like, you know, I think, especially if you've been in your location for a while, like that new set of eyes might see something that you didn't see or didn't notice, or they'll, you know, I love the inquisitive onboarder. Like, I think that's a great person to have on your team. And so, you know, leaning into that inquisitive nature that they'll have is, you know, well, why is this like that? Or why is that like that? And every once in a while I get thrown off, because I'm like, I'm not really sure. I don't know why that's there. Or, oh, we didn't know that was set up like that. Or, no, like, stop the line. Like, every once in a while, I'm like, that was not supposed to be like that. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. But I think that's part of onboarding, is like the other part that onboarding that I'm talking about does is it makes them create connections and relationships that can be used in the future. So like, when we talk about them meeting the operators on the floor, which I am a huge fan of, then when you're doing like a risk assessment or you have an incident, those people have met you where you've been interested in them first before it started with a problem. And so to me, that's a secret gem of an onboarding process, is that if you develop like a personal relationship before you actually get into an issue management relationship, it's really critical, because then the operator already has a foundation with you, and then they can, you know, share like, hey, this is what we found, or this is what we know. But when you start off just going and saying like, what happened? And they're like, I don't know who you are. Like, I've never seen you before. That can be really difficult.
Right.
So Kathrina, I've got a question. So when you talk about this, because that's, you know, not everybody has a different approach to onboarding. So how do you see people respond to this approach with kind of, I don't say unleashing them, but, you know, kind of challenging them to go find things? And then how do you see that play out for them on that journey of success as they go forward?
Yeah, so I'd say most often people like that there's a plan. So, you know, I will say, and little things mean a lot. So oftentimes just like a welcome sign when they get there. I mean, it's not hard to do, but just like a welcome sign when they get there, maybe, you know, a notebook and a pad that says the name of the company. Like, everybody likes bling and has pride in who they're going to be working for. And so I would say that's one simple thing. And then when you sit down with them and say, this is the plan, I want you to set up meetings with them. Most often people like it. Every once in a while they're intimidated. And so, you know, making it a comfortable space for them to say like, you know, this seems like a lot, like, what's the expectation? Because also they want to meet your expectations. So to say like, hey, I expect approximately this will take 2 weeks. And the way that you're going to do is, and also saying people are going to expect these meetings. Like, people expect that you're new and you're starting out. So this is part of our culture. But when we get to the actual assessment, I'll say that's where people get a little intimidated, and that's okay. Like, it's not a bad thing for people to be held accountable to making sure they know and learn their system.
Right. So,
you know, I think oftentimes as leaders, we do tend to shy away from like some of those teachable moments or those tougher conversations. And so I usually also, one of the onboarding things that I do is I actually have a getting to know me sheet. So like, it's just a quick 1.5 page sheet that's just like, you know, here's who I am. Like, I have 3 boys, you know, family time is important to me. So just kind of some of my core values. Then it also talks about how I expect you to communicate with me. So I start with that right off the bat, just so that they're clear on like, how are we going to work together? And I really try to help people understand like communication between us should be really solid and clear, because there's too much important work out there to do for you to worry about where you stand with me. And so a lot of times when we get to that assessment time, you know, they want to do like a pre-assessment and they want to talk about what they've learned so far. And we usually just call it needs additional learning. And it's an easy way to just say like, hey, you went through this process. I can already see that you're a people person and that you're people oriented. So I want you to round out your technical knowledge of your system. And so most often people like that plan. And that's actually one of the things we even hear on campus is that they hear about our plan and our QA program. And they like the idea that there is a plan and there is a way that you're going to progress through your development and that it's thoughtful. And so people want to know that they're thought about and that there's a plan for their career.
Yeah. I love the way you talk about this. And, you know, there's so many like little nuggets that you're giving along the way on like building relationships early, setting expectations with your manager. I know we've been talking about it from a facility or a plant standpoint, but would you say these things still fit if I was joining a corporate team?
I sure would. Like, I think, you know, some of the best corporate onboarders that I've seen is when they look at like I always think of like if you're in the center, who's your circle of influence? Like who are those people that you're going to have to talk to or work through issues with? And developing that relationship early is really important. And so one of our directors started new in the baking area, and she hadn't been with a plant or developed. So the first thing she did was set up time with me to understand like just the plant, like, and understand like what's happening in the plant. And then she also onboarded within her team as well. And there's lots of tools out there for that too. But I'd say the start of the relationship is really critical. And then the start of understanding the technologies that you're managing. So if you're in corporate and you're managing soup, understanding like that's thermally processed, and there's some pretty deep and rich regulation involved in that. And so then you probably have a regulatory group, or you might have regulatory bodies that you have to work with. So really understanding that and knowing like what are those SOP compliance things, or what are like if you're in dairy, knowing that the PMO exists and that you have to follow the guidance of the PMO. So there's some of that stuff that really great corporate resources to us have understood that, or have reached out to ask, like, what should I know? And that's a great corporate question. Like if you're in a corporate role and you're not sure like where to start, reach out to the more seasoned employees. And that's the other thing that I like to talk about too, is partnering a seasoned employee with a new employee is like secret sauce. Yeah. And so as a manager, I've seen these amazingly fun relationships develop between, you know, people that have 30 plus years with brand new employees. And, you know, that dynamic could be extremely challenging, meaning like there's a lot of, you know, differences in like beliefs and philosophies. But what you're doing is you're saying to your senior employee, like, hey, I value your skill set and your expertise and your ability to impart that knowledge to somebody else. And then to the young employee, you're saying this person is important and you should learn from them. And so like you're really setting up the dynamic of respect right away. And so to me, that's a pretty cool secret sauce that I will tell you, like, when I first started doing that with people, I did it out of need. And so like there was some forethought, but like as I did it more often, I became more passionate about the fact that this is the way that this is part of the path, is that you honor your senior employees by asking them to help train your junior employees. And at first as a manager, you feel like I don't want to keep putting so much work on people, but you're also telling them, I respect the heck out of you. And I think if you can help me develop this younger leader, that would be really, really amazing. So I know that we talked about that in our pre-session, but that to me is another part of a great onboarding plan, is maybe setting up a mentor or a coach or somebody that is a great phone a friend. And I think that's super important, especially when I think of corporate folks. You know, there's a lot of responsibilities that they shoulder and share, especially in the supply chain world that we're in today. And so you've got to have a phone a friend. You've got to. And if you're a manager of that person, be thoughtful about who that mentor should be, and think of like, what are the issues that they're going to get quickly thrown into, and how can you set them up for success?
Yeah.
That really is secret sauce, because one of the things that Tia and I often hear from people coming into leadership is sometimes they almost hold back a little bit because they think, how will I ever learn what somebody who's already been here 10, 20, 30 years? I'll never be able to learn all of that. And by doing the secret sauce move, you naturally break down some of those barriers that perhaps, contribute to that. But like you said, it also is this really great way to show people how much you value them. And at the end of the day, we all want to do things that matter. We want to have purpose. And so what a great way to build that culture that we're all looking for, that really just flows right into food safety culture.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it actually gives you confidence where, you know, if you're talking with someone that's seasoned in the organization and they've given you some of their knowledge, and now you're going into a meeting or you're talking with people that have the same type of tenure, you know that you've gotten great information and that you understand, the culture or like past decisions and why they were made. And so that just gives you a little bit more confidence in your role.
Absolutely. And there's like I'll say, at least in our culture, there's a caretaker element that starts becoming routine. Like, so like the more that you build that culture of it, the more that it's understood. So like as I think of the young people that I have in my organization today, and the more senior engineers that I have, like they really, like they have a playful, fun relationship with each personality. But when it comes down to it, there's an issue, like everybody's there to support. So the thing that also happens is you don't feel alone. And so I always think of, like, we always talk about, like, get people in the boat with you. So like, I always talk about that with my team, like, don't be shy to share, like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, how would you handle it? Make it collaborative discussions, like, so that it's every voice is heard and every voice has an opinion. I think that's so important to me. You know, we think about, like, issues don't happen at a nice planful way, right? Like, it could happen. I've had QEs start and it's like the second week on the job and an audit shows up. That actually just happened to one of my employees. And I was like, all right, so let me give you a couple of, you know, and I will say it's these small moments of coaching. So like, if you have somebody coming and you have an audit and you're like, man, I just don't want them to say the wrong thing on the audit, then tell them that. Just say, like, my expectation on this audit is for you to just walk around and observe. If you have questions, ask them to me or a team member to the side, but this is not the time for you to interact with a regulator right now. Like, just, that's like, that was 5 minutes or less of just a simple coachable moment. Like, just, hey, this is what I expect as we walk into this situation. Or, you know, especially as you're trying to communicate at different levels, just telling them what's going to happen gives them comfort. So like, there's a lot of times where, and I'll say, as employees who are trying to be onboarded, ask questions, say, like, what do you expect of me right now? Like, what, you know, just try to gain clarity. And if you're not getting that clarity, ask. Like, I think it's okay. I have, you know, some of my folks are so good at asking me, like, well, what am I supposed to do right now? And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me tell you, like, so sorry, I didn't cover that. Like, you know, I will say, like, after onboarding a lot of people, there's a time where I might forget what I've covered. And so that could happen. I'm just saying. And so it's okay to, you know, own that and be like, gosh, I'm sorry. Like, let's go over that. Yeah, let's take that time to do that. Yeah, I think is important too.
Yes, well, I love that.
And that really, that sets the stage. Actually, just last week, Tia and I read a little passage from Stephen Covey, the highly, you know, the highly successful, well, I have the book here somewhere. Anyways, but he said, you know, like, even when you look at relationships and issues in relationships, they all stem from unclear expectations. Mm-hmm. And so the more often we can have that clarity of, like, what's expected of me? Like, what does that look like? So that I know how to be here in this space so that I can be successful. We can be successful. Like, the organization can be successful. Like, yeah, that's where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love Nikita's question. She asked, what is the secret to easily learning the company lingo? So thinking about, and this is someone that's fresh from school, or even now you're joining a new organization and you have to learn the language.
Yeah, that's gosh, we all have it, don't we? Yeah. Like, and when you walk in, you literally feel like you're walking into a foreign country because you're like, I don't know what that is. And so I think one is just identifying that to the people that have been there for a while. So I think just saying, like, hey, is there, so like, we actually have like a cheat sheet for our acronyms. We're a great acronym company. Like, everything's ITQ and FSQ and FSRA and FSSC. And like, you know, but typically those have a meaning, like, so they have, like, FSQ is food safety quality, like the F, S, and Q mean something. And so I'd say, like, really try to, like, understand, like, what the acronym actually means. And then when people say an acronym that you don't understand, be okay saying, listen, I'm still trying to learn the lingo. Like, what's that mean? And I think the funny thing is, like, in a lot of companies, they name stuff after project names, which have absolutely no relevance to, like, what's happening on the line or the system or the project that you're currently working on. So that makes it even more challenging. And so a lot of times there is, like, a little dictionary that can be on, like, the company website that just kind of gives you. And so, like, I usually start with HR because HR will know, like, where those things exist in different companies. And if they don't exist, I will tell you, like, the first years and years ago. I feel like Father Time right now, but we actually didn't have an acronym list. And one of the new onboarding people wrote the acronym list. And then it kept getting updated because they were like, this is driving me crazy. And so they just actually wrote it. And so many people benefited from that activity that that person did. So I'd also say, even if you're onboarding and new, there are opportunities where you can create something that is of value to other people. So if you need it, somebody else probably needs it too. And so that's a good opportunity. And oftentimes, I mean, the programs that I've built have been parts of every little, you know, new person that has come in working for me. I've made them better through those people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just because you're new to the organization and you're going through this onboarding process doesn't mean you don't, and that you can't add value to the organization. Because like you said, if it's something that you need as someone that's onboarding, most likely other people also need it. Like there's a gap there. And if you can close it because you have the knowledge and you have the ability to, go ahead and close it, take the initiative.
And I will say there is a caveat with that. So if you are transitioning from one company to another or one plant to another, the caveat is to be a little mindful of bringing like the ideas from another. Remember, like each plant, each company has their own culture. So for you to be like, in my old plant, in my old company, that gets super annoying. And so like, that would be like, if that was one of those teachable moments where I'd be like, let me pull you aside. Like you've been talking about your old plant for the last week and now you're here.
Right.
And so while you may, and I also say, so what the balance is you want to steal with pride. So like if there was a good program at your other plant, you know, one, you gotta be careful of like, if you're coming from one company to another, like it is inappropriate to take, confidential information from one company and bring it to another. Absolutely. However, if there's something that interplant wide that you've learned somebody has, or there's something that you have that you think could be of benefit, just bring it as a benefit and say, hey, I've got an idea, not necessarily at my old. I will just tell you, people get so irritated when the comparisons start. And so you just want to avoid that. Or give it time. Like I always like people to assess for 1 to 2 weeks before they bring ideas to the table. Now, and I say that just because you're going to see so much and you're going to want to take so much action, especially if you're an experienced onboarded person, you've got to take that time to determine what you think is the most important. Because in 2 weeks, you're going to see things and the stuff you saw at the beginning isn't going to be the biggest issue. Right. And so you want to take that time and, you know, so I say like steal with pride, but be careful of that you're not doing anything that's inappropriate and that you're not constantly telling the plant or the place that you're working that they don't have good stuff. Right. So who wants to hear that? Like who wants to be criticized the entire time you're onboarding? Yeah. But if you have great ideas, bring them to the table. Right. Yes. I love it. First, find your feet. I love it. Yes. Great quote.
Great one, Ray.
You know, I think that's one of the stumbling blocks of a new leader. You know, they come in and they're trying to make assessments or they're doing comparison and they really haven't taken the time to learn their system or learn their people. And I would say the higher up in the organization you are, the more time you need to learn the organization, the more time you need to dig deeper into the layers and understand where the organization is, where they've been trying to go, what work has been done. And, you know, obviously this work has been over years. So you need time to be able to understand who your people are and what work they've been doing before you come in and start making comparisons or, you know, making conclusions, right? We always talk about, as a leader, your words hold so much value. So if you are coming in and you're making an assessment and you're speaking about, you know, a system that's been there for 100 years and people have been working on this particular system for 30 years and you're making an assessment based off of a week, you know, most of the time you're going to be wrong. And but you can't just be wrong and move on from it. Your words actually mean something to the organization. So we see that in leaders where they make that mistake where they're, they really don't spend the time of onboarding to their role because for whatever reason, they're trying to make quick decisions or they want things to move faster, or they feel like they know, right? Even though they haven't dove deep into what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think of, so I have, like, when I go into a place, I'm very thoughtful about I have like a sheet that I use, and I look at like different things in the organization. So if I'm going into a brand new plant that I haven't worked in, I use our policies just because so you probably have company policies wherever you're at. And I literally take the first 2 weeks to red, yellow, green them. And so like that helps me determine where I want to prioritize and focus. And I do that through a lot of visual, my own visual learnings. I then go out and talk to my people out there. And then the other thing is I really then assess data. So I love data and information, where's my environmental program? Where's my quality program? So I think in terms of there's 3 areas that I want to understand. It's food safety, it's sanitation, and it's food quality. So I want to know those programs. And then from that, if food safety and sanitation are a risk, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on quality yet. I need to get those shored up and straight because that'll affect our consumer market. And so those have to be dealt with first. And so those are usually the categories I also talk to with my employees. And the one that I always feel like we miss on, but so important, is sanitation. So understanding. So that's the other part of when you onboard, I have them try to spend time on the off shifts and see a sanitation so that they can actually see what happens during sanitation, what chemicals are used, how are we cleaning, what's the cleaning process. And those are the 3 components that I would encourage all onboarding programs to have included. Because if you're a quality professional, but you don't know the sanitation program or your sanitation professionals or your sanitation resources, it's going to be really hard for you to understand the total impact of your food safety program.
Yeah.
Very much so. So Kathrina, with you're like the master onboarder, right?
Well, thank you.
And it makes me think about, even as you're talking about all these things, I mean, you've got these perspective and insights that probably others can't see or maybe aren't even ready to see when it comes to moving into a food safety quality role or even taking that step into a leadership role. So would you mind sharing maybe a couple things that people can't see that for you, you're like, this stands out to me about an area that really doesn't get enough attention or, thought before people move into these type of roles?
So, are you thinking about physical assessment, or are you thinking about more what tools need to be in your toolbox?
However you would want to interpret that. You are the master onboarder.
Yeah. I would say if you're going through, assume that they don't know what they don't know. And so be more transparent with when you are explaining something, say, and just say I'm going to overshare with this and you can tell me if it's too much. And so to me, when I think of onboarding somebody, again, it goes back to who are they to begin with? And so and leadership, when I think of onboarding for leadership, it could be people leadership, but it could also be technical leadership. So, and both are equally important. So when I think of what people don't know, oftentimes they come in and they don't know the value of relationship, or they don't know just how we're making what we make. And so they get way too far down their career path and they've never really understood how you make the product. And so to me, that, or why we make the product the way that we do, ask lots of questions, why does this need to be made this way? Or why does, what's the, I think of dairy is a great one. Why do we have all these, what's the history of why we have all these seals and why we have such high regulatory? Well, it's because people got sick. Like there's a reason that a lot, usually somebody got hurt or somebody got sick, and that's why we do what we do. And so I think just really helping people understand like the why behind things is probably the most critical thing. And not just food safety people, but all people. So like I always tell even my operation people, if I'm asking you to do something and it doesn't seem logical, ask me. Like we need to create a culture that people want to understand why the program is what it is and why we do what we do, because then they can feel comfortable either making sure it's important. So like when we talk to people about like, it is critical that you report foreign material because you would never want a baby to choke on the product that we make. Just those simple, again, those teachable moments like that. Let me help you understand why this foreign material is a big deal or why this one's not. I think, again, that's what they just don't know. Like, and I always say, would you eat it? Would you feed it to your family and friends? And are you okay with shipping it in the marketplace? Like, so like if you wouldn't eat it, don't make the consumer pay for that. If you wouldn't feed it to your family or your friends, so like there's some simpleness, right? Like, if you're not going to eat what's produced on your line, and that translates to every single employee, One of the things I did, so speaking of onboarding, I'll take a tangent for a second. One of the things that we had this huge project, tons and tons of contractors in the plant. And so I knew I had to create these like really digestible moments for the people coming in. And I knew like they came from all sorts of different industry, because that's the other thing is you can get people from all different industries and they don't think about how to make food. And so I talk about it being a big kitchen. It's a big, big kitchen. So what would you do in your own kitchen? You got to do the same thing here. Maybe some people might not. And then
that's scary, Kathrina, scary. No, okay.
Yeah, like I think of, and like one of them that I still hear about from contractors today. So we had 400 contractors under a tent in our parking lot. And I was trying to explain to them, I needed them to keep the doors closed. And it was because we don't want birds in the plant. And so I literally had like a 3-minute speech and I got up in front of all of them. And if you don't know me, I'm quite short. I have a big personality, but I'm super short. And so I got up on this podium, which they barely could see me because the thing was so high. So I had to stand to the side of the podium and I was like, all right, guys. And I fed them. That's the other thing is I fed them first. And I was like, hey, I have 2 things I need to go over with you. And so the one that I wanted them to really understand is I said, I need everybody to close the doors because it's getting to be spring and we got birds hatching. And I don't know if you guys know this, but when birds fly, they poop. They constantly poop when they're flying, pooping. And so if you let a bird in my plant, it's going to be pooping. And I need you to not let a bird in my plant because I don't want bird poop in my plant. Is it clear? And they all just kind of were like, okay. And I tell you what, we did not have door open problems because you have to, like, these digestible moments have to be abundantly clear to the person that you're trying to onboard. And so it could be that you're onboarding a food safety professional, but you also want to be able to think about like every person that you're interacting with. If you're a food safety professional, needs to hear from you if you're seeing things that aren't to the standard that you want them to be. And so, I think of onboarding contractors and onboarding, I mean, you could go on and on and on, but those are the things is they just might not know. And so assume they may not know, and it's your role and responsibility to help them understand and do it in a respectful and thoughtful way, and maybe a funny way.
Right. I think that is like, when we talk about secret sauce, I think that is a great point in like the ultimate secret sauce, because we even talk about in our onboarding programs, how do technical leaders communicate to people that are not technical? And that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
How do you break it down in a way that's relatable, that people can understand, right? Like everyone can understand that they do not want a bird pooping in their kitchen. everyone can understand that.
Everybody gets it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, that's how you're communicating that technical side of food safety with people that don't have that technical food safety background. So that's a huge component of onboarding and really, teaching new food safety and quality leaders or people that's getting into the food safety and quality space, that you have that technical background, you understand, but it's critical to your role that you can communicate that to others. Because if it was up to us, all the doors would be shut, right? Like if we were the person that was opening and closing doors, they'll be shut every single time. But we know that we're not the only ones walking in and out of doors. As a matter of fact, we're like 0.001% of the people that's walking in and out of doors. So being able to communicate that is a huge piece. So I love that secret sauce.
Yeah.
I think, Kathrina, that we have we're just going to have you back on the show because you have so many nuggets of wisdom for us. We could go on and on and on.
Absolutely. I think before we end, one piece of information I would love for you to give us is what's missing from onboarding. So you've onboarded quite a bit of people. I know that you connect with other locations at General Mills. You also connect with other people outside of General Mills and within the industry. What would you say is missing from a lot of onboarding programs that you see? Or maybe the question that people are asking you the most on how do I onboard a new leader or a new person from school or a seasoned leader from out in the industry that's now getting into the organization?
Yeah, I'd say the things that I hear most is sometimes the onboarding is left to a manager alone. And sometimes that manager is not a food safety person. And so that person doesn't, they don't have a forum. And that's why I love what you guys are creating here. So this is a forum that, we're talking, but if people did reach out to me and wanted to ask me questions, I'm happy to help with that. Because again, food safety is not a competitive advantage. We all want safe food in the marketplace. It makes us all better. But I'd say, one is I think a lot of times we just fail to make a plan and make that important. So a lot of times people just show up and they're like, oh, yeah, we're so glad you got here. And we don't take that time, which is not, you think it's time, a lot of time, it's not. It's not a lot of time to spend that 30 minutes up front and say, we're so glad you're here. You add value to our team right away. And we have a plan for you. So I think that the thing that I see most often miss is a plan. And then I would say from that plan, the second thing is setting up relationships, being thoughtful about who could be a mentor, who could be a coach. And oftentimes but I also have a buddy system, which is somebody so my last QA is the buddy for the new QA. So I set up, so they're a safe space, to ask the questions especially if they're moving to the new location, let's say there's a move involved, that's a whole different level of where are safe places to look for housing? What are different locations to look for housing? So I think in onboarding, think of what all that person has to be thinking about and then try to meet those needs as they're trying to come on board. So it could be, if you're a smaller company, you may just have to set them up with it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody in your group. I've set people up with other people in the operations group because I knew hey, you're from Nashville, they're moving to Nashville. Would you mind just reaching out? So you can ask a lot of other people in your organization, and a lot of times they're super happy to do it and they appreciate that you asked. So that's the other thing is set up these relationships for people so that they feel cared about. Yeah. And that's the other thing. And then finally, I'd say, think of the technical things you need them to know. So if you need them to really understand the system, because that's a gap in your organization, be clear about that. So it's okay to have onboarding be very specific to needs. So if you need somebody to work in raw materials because you have a gap there, great. And then tell them hey, these are the 5 things that we're going to need you to know, and be very upfront about it. So being upfront about what the role's going to take so that they know the purpose of the onboarding. So, I'm going to need you to be able to do material management in 30 days. And so everything that you do in this next 30 days is about you taking on material management. And success to me looks like that you are filing your own quality notifications. So like, boom, right? There was an expectation, an objective, and a clear timeline. And that's the other one, timeline. People don't give timelines on like when they think things should be done by.
Right. I love that. So great. And like Jill said, we will definitely have you back on because this is information that people need to hear and need to digest and need to think about it in their own systems, in their own onboarding programs, right? Because this is the foundation. This is the foundation on how we grow leaders and how we really execute our food safety and quality programs, and ultimately how you are setting up your food safety culture at your organization. This is the start, right, of that.
It sets the tone. It sets the tone. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been awesome. And we're not going to let you go without asking speed round questions.
Oh.
For our audience, this is something new that we're adding because we love Kathrina and we want to know her in a little bit different way too. So are you ready, Kathrina?
I'm ready.
Okay. Who's the funniest person you know?
My dad.
Your dad. All right.
My dad.
Where would you love to go on vacation?
Hawaii again, or Italy and Hawaii. So Italy for the food and the culture, and then Hawaii for the beach.
That's good.
That's good. If you could be a character from a movie, book, or show, which one would you choose?
A movie, book, a character from a movie, book, or show. I think I'd be a superhero. I'm going to go to superhero. And I think it might have to be Iron Man, which would now have to be Iron Woman, but I don't want to die. So like I want all the powers that he had.
Right.
Totally.
Pretty fantastic.
I like
and
that.
Building this superpower team, like
I like that.
Well, that's what you do every day, right? As
yes, I already build a food safety superpower team, but I think we want like the powers to go with it, like flight and strength and all that.
Absolutely.
So for people that don't know you, until you get those superpowers, what would they say is your superpower?
Ooh, that don't know me. I don't know. I might defer to Tia. What do you think my superpower is?
One of the things, so when I was being recruited into General Mills, I had the opportunity to go to a few different locations, right? They're like, do you want to be in Murfreesboro? Do you want to be in Reed City? Do you want to be here? Do you want to be there? And I remember everyone said, you want to go to Murfreesboro, not only because of the size of the location, but Kathrina creates rock stars. So it was like, that was what people said about her, is that she creates rock stars within this organization. And so I'm like, I want to be a rock star, of course. So
who doesn't?
That's how I ended up in Murfreesboro. And honestly, it was, I could count on two hands or more of people saying that's exactly where you want to go, because Kathrina develops her people. She has and it really comes down to onboarding, right? Like she has a great onboarding program. Whenever you get out of the program, she's constantly feeding you development opportunities. And when she talks about, those tidbits, those coaching moments, that's built into the way that she leads. And so I got all of that feedback, even before I said yes to General Mills and the location that I was going to. And, everyone said, that's exactly where you want to be. So that's what I would say is your superpower, is that you really create other superheroes in the organization and rock stars out in the industry. And it's making an impact.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I would say, I don't know if it's a superpower, but I genuinely and passionately care about food safety, and I care about people. And so I love people. I think maybe what I would say is I love getting to know somebody and then helping them see where they can shine. I find that's so exciting to me, is to just looking at somebody and saying, you are so good at working with people, or you are so good technically, or, you're such a creative, technical person. That's a rare gem. Like, just helping them find like what's inside them that is really special.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
Love it.
And really captures the epitome of leadership.
Yes.
Kathrina, we've been so honored to have you here with us and share these nuggets, and just
thank you. I was so honored to be asked.
Yes.
It really made me very excited. So
wonderful. Oh gosh. Well, like I said, we'll have to do this again. And so the rest of this month, following up with Kathrina, and of course, this will be out on YouTube. So you can go back and capture, parts that maybe you missed or you want to hear again or share with others. It'll be out in a day or two, a couple days. So make sure you go out there and share it. And then as we go forward, we will be having more guests the rest of this month talking about onboarding and early leadership. And next week, we're having Veronica from New Grads. And so we'll have a whole different perspective on kind of making that transition and coming into food safety and quality. So we look forward to having you there with us.
Yes.
So any final words?
No, just go out and make it a great day, and appreciate all my food safety peeps out there. We're doing great work. It's important work. So, proud of you for taking the time for your own personal development too. That's always important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much to our audience. We love to see your comments and your perspectives in our comments. So thank you very much for sharing them. If you are showing up and watching us on replay, please use #replay and add your comments, because we do go back and look at them and answer them and interact. So we're excited to have you here. And thank you, Kathrina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.